I want to talk about, and interestingly, this wasn't even on purpose, but today's episode is actually going to focus a lot of on illegal immigration because I
Hmm.
think this is the most wild story. When did the superintendent story break? Was it on Friday?
Friday afternoon because I was on well, when it became real to me. I was on my way to a date night with my husband, and I start getting all of these alerts, and I was like, this can't be true." Like,
Correct. It sounds
obviously.
insane.
I mean, the largest school district in
In
Iowa, I was
Iowa.
like, there's no chance. And there was. And I threw up something real quick just so that people were aware of the story. And then the following 2 days, I got more and more information about it. And it's just too bizarre. It's one of those things where it's like, if you wrote it down, people say this all the time, like, if you wrote it, but truth is stranger than fiction. If you wrote this in a book, your editor would be like, that sounds
That's not
very
true.
unlikely. That's not going to
Yeah,
happen. And
that
it's like,
can't
well,
happen.
it did in America. So,
Well, if you haven't been following, just so you know, on Friday, a man by the name of Ian Andre Roberts was arrested by ICE. Now, he wasn't just arrested, he fled the ICE officers in his government, like state government vehicle. He was issued a vehicle as superintendent of this district. He fled. I believe the car like went into the woods or something like that. He then jumped out of the car, went into the woods, hid, and had to be found using a canine officer.
mhm.
When they approached his vehicle, they discovered a handgun, $3,000, and a blade, a knife. I think it was just one of these folding knives. And then information about him has come out. Now, he has been superintendent. I think he was hired in 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So he's been superintendent of the largest school district of Des Moines, Iowa. Reports are that he overstayed his visa. So he came to the United States in 1999 on an F1 student visa to attend St. John's University and overstayed. Eventually, at some point, he was issued a final deportation order in May of 2024. This is during the Biden administration. Now,
Mhm.
previously, also in 2020, he had a weapons charge. It was February of 2020. Now, the details
Mhm.
of that particular weapons charge, I think a lot of people like you hear about a handgun in his car at the time of his arrest. You're assuming that the weapons charge in 2020
Yeah.
was also a handgun. So
Yeah.
that event in 2020 was actually in regards to a hunting rifle, and it was like a minor infraction where
Mhm.
he had laid down the hunting rifle in the back seat. It was improper, I think, storage of the hunting rifle.
Oh, so he got okay.
Yeah, and so he got like this charge, but it wasn't anything huge. What I think is interesting though is that even back in 2020, he would have been here illegally.
Right.
And it should
How would that
also
not
be
have been pulled up? Like,
I well, that's there's so many like opportunities for I guess him to be exposed or whatever. I don't know what
yeah.
the right word is, but and he wasn't. And then mind you, this is particularly important to point out the weapons charges because being in the country illegally or not being a US citizen, even if he was here legally but not being a US citizen, he is not allowed to carry a firearm. Like he's not like that's illegal. It's only US citizens who have, I don't know, met the requirements of whatever state that they're in that are permitted to have a firearm, be in possession of a firearm.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know. I haven't investigated. I don't know if there's some loophole. I don't want to say loophole, but a different standard for
Yeah.
rifles when you're hunting. Because many states will have different standards, handguns versus long guns. So I
Mhm.
don't know if maybe that's part of it. And he didn't, the officer just didn't do like a full, check. I don't know like at what extent a state officer, especially some forest officer, is going to know of whether or not he's illegal at the time that they're issuing an infraction on a firearm. Like I'm not
Oh,
100% sure
okay,
on
but
that.
my thought would be if I am sitting in the Oval Office or just like state government, my thought would be when I hear this story, wait a second. There should be a very, very, very simple way for every single person who is pulled over and issued a ticket or whatever for any officer for any infraction to be able to just see at the top of, the search undocumented, illegal.
Yeah,
Like,
but
this
you
should be
know that
so, so,
many
so
I
simple. There
mean,
should be one
historically
flag across the country.
yeah, but you know that historically, the states haven't spoken to each other. We've seen this issue with teachers who abuse students that go from state to state. We've
Mhm.
seen this issue,
Right.
with sex offenders that go from this has been a consistent problem that from state to
Yeah.
state, they don't communicate with each other. And I mean, you would think with illegal immigration,
Yeah.
considering it's a national level, it should be something of more concern, but
Well, even just
not
in a state
surprising.
though, like I know when I went to go teach or when I've really done any type of job, work at a church for Pete's sake. They run background checks. You have to issue and show them when I went to go work, I had to show them all kinds of documentation, my social security card, birth certificate, all kinds of things. How along the way was he able to skirt around all of that? That's my question. And if states aren't doing basic background checks. On a background check, you have to get a background check. To be a superintendent of the biggest school district in your state, there has to be some kind of background check. How did he not get flagged as an undocumented immigrant at that point?
Well, here's the deal, and that's one of the things that is really interesting in this case. Now, I should mention that since he's been arrested, he has
Mhm.
lost his state issued, what is it, like superintendent license.
I mean, good.
So that has been
That
that has
makes
been
sense.
revoked. Yes. However, so he specifically for this position was hired using I think it was called JP, I forget the name of the group, but it was a hiring firm that was
Mhm.
used to do the search, select him. They were supposed to go through the entire processing of background checks and everything. And then it was JG Consulting. That's the name of it,
Uh-huh.
and they specialize in finding and hiring for upper level education professions. They even have a whole page on their website, at least they did yesterday, where they were announcing the fact that they had found this superintendent and filled this position. So is JG
Even after the
Consulting.
news hit that he was an
I
elite,
found
like
it
they
yesterday. I don't know if it's still up there, but I did see it yesterday.
that's insane that that's still up there. Like,
Now,
hello.
it is that consulting group who is
Mhm.
hired by the Iowa Des Moines School District to find their superintendent.
Right.
Now, it would be up to them because it even says on their website that they do all the type of background check, they check into them, they
Yep.
verify their education, all that they do the vetting for you and that they
Right.
just present you with the candidate. Clearly, that did not happen in this situation.
Yeah.
However, also previously, he had been working in Pennsylvania in the Mill Creek Township School District. So there's also the question of how did he end up as superintendent over in this Pennsylvania district too?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I have gone through background checks simply to teach, not even to be an administrator or a school counselor or um, a superintendent, all of which would, I believe, require more scrutiny than just an average teacher. And this it just seems crazy to me. And so like when people tell me, Rachel, when I was sharing a lot last year about the SAVE Act, trying to make sure and ensure that no illegal immigrant can vote in our national elections, and people are like, that is not happening. Don't be crazy.
Well,
Maybe it's like 100 people in the nation, but it's not consequential. And I am like, hello, obviously this is not only possible, but apparently rather easy to pull off, it seems.
well, did you see reports that this individual has been registered to vote in the state of Maryland in 2012?
Yes, I did.
So to say that it never happens, I mean, look, honestly, I think that the scale of which something happens, we don't really know if we're not really willing to investigate it. And I think, this is
Right.
a high profile case where clearly something wrong happened. Multiple things were allowed to
Hmm.
fall through the cracks. There's also a big question if a lot of things were overlooked because of the desire to fill these upper positions of education with a person who is a minority, a person of color
Hmm.
here,
Yeah.
who immigrated to the United States, but a lot of his information is inconsistent. So, and what's fascinating to me too is the headlines or the focus of the media, of course, is like almost every headline that you read on this story from legacy
Hmm.
media is a simple statement of Iowa superintendent detained or arrested by ICE. That's all it says. It doesn't make any mention whatsoever of the fact that we have a longtime illegal immigrant that is running one of the largest school districts in the
Mhm.
state of Iowa. Like, I think that should be much more of a headline and the scandal than the fact that he was detained.
Of course.
But that's not the
Of
headline
course.
at
Of
all, and
course.
that's not the focus.
No one legacy media uses the headlines, the actual headlines, and to manipulate because they know most people aren't gonna read further if something kinda justifies their narrative. The same thing happened over the weekend. You already see the New York Times putting out stuff, about those, 2 people, one homeless and one college student, who hung themselves in Mississippi. New York Times is already trying to they're not explicitly saying, these are lynchings, but they put the word lynching in their headline. The lynchings are still have an echo of the past in Mississippi. And then they'll show a picture of an African American man standing there talking about how he knows that these, in the little teeny text, he knows that these things that happened were actually suicides, but it still echoes lynchings to him. And you see that and you realize they're using the few words that they have to craft a narrative because that's what's going to stick with people. Most people are not going to jump in and read an entire article. We're not built for that anymore. People don't do that anymore, sadly. But they're doing it with this too. They are not, they're burying the lead. It'll be like maybe 3 paragraphs in or 4 paragraphs in, but they know that they lose people by then.
It's interesting actually that you bring up that story about
Yeah.
the lynch or the because one of them, I think they were both suicides, and
Yeah. One was a
one of them
homeless
was
man
a
and one was a college student.
yeah. And so do you oh my gosh, I forgot her name right now, but she goes to college campuses to challenge college students on abortion,
Mhm.
the Student for Life
Mhm.
group. And do you know who I'm talking
Yeah.
about? She has long dark hair with glasses. I can't believe I'm blanking
I
out of
think
her
her
name.
name is Savannah. Is that what her name is?
No, it's not Savannah. No. Anyways,
I think it's
so
Savannah. No? Okay.
I know it's not
Oh,
Savannah.
Kristen Hawkins.
Yes.
Kristen
Yes.
Hawkins.
Kristen Hawkins. Thank you. I was going to say Kristen Hawkins. So I recently saw a video of her where she was on the campus with, talking to one of these students, and one of the students actually said that after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, students were lynched on on college campuses in reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination, which absolutely makes no sense considering that everybody knew from the get-go that the assassin was a white guy. Like, I don't understand
Mhm.
why all of a sudden that would make people lynch black men on college campuses on top of that, because she specifically said college campuses. I don't
Mhm.
know if these 2 events happen near universities, but she was like, "Google it, look it up, that just
Yeah.
happened." Well, that's what she was remembering some headline that happened
Yep.
shortly after around the same time as Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and she put 2 and 2 together, made assumptions, filled in the blanks with
Mhm.
false assumptions, and that is a conclusion that she reached. That people
Yep.
in response to Charlie Kirk's assassination, because he was such a horrible fascist Nazi, then decided to lynch young students of
Right.
color on college campuses, which is
Yeah.
insane to me. Like,
Yeah.
that's how the rabbit hole of the mind goes,
Mhm.
when you are just focusing on the headlines and not the full context of these stories. Like,
Yes.
I was like
Yeah.
dumbfounded. I'm like,
Yeah.
Where did that even come from?
It's
That
just we're
idea.
a soundbite nation right now, and if people hear 30 seconds that confirm their bias, they're all in. They don't check the facts, they don't check the data, and they just run with it because who's gonna tell them no? Like, there aren't a whole lot of people standing, at college campuses and saying, "Go look at your Google right now, look up that exact story, read about it," you know? So they're not accountable to anybody. They can just say whatever they want.
Well, have you been following Laura Powell's investigation into Ian Roberts and his background?
A little bit. Like, there's been 7,000 news stories this
I
week,
know.
so
I
I'm
know.
doing
It's
my level best. While my
well,
kid
she
runs around, like, with a bucket on her head behind me, and the other one's playing a violin, and, there's macaroni and cheese on the ground, so I'm trying.
well, let me give you an update. So she's actually been doing some investigation into Roberts, specifically his resume, his background. And, for example, she points out that he called himself a doctor, as in, like, a doctor of education, even though at the time he did not have the degree. He claimed a doctorate from Morgan State in 2019 which is false. It says it's, from an online university in 2021, not Morgan State. He has
Um,
claimed that he had won a Principal of the Year in Washington, D.C. in 2013 from George Washington University. This is unverified. There's a bunch of inconsistencies too. Like, he has said that he, like, was born in Ghana, but then he's also said that he was born in Brooklyn and raised by a single mother. So it's almost, and these are like in interviews. So he's asked in interviews to, because he's gotten a whole bunch of coverage by local news every time he is,
yeah.
because I think he was also he competed in the Sydney Olympics too for Ghana. Did you not know that?
No.
Yeah.
He's an Olympian too.
He's
Okay.
an Olympian. So that's what I'm saying. It's like he had this whole resume and all of this, it's like it's very impressive, especially the
Yeah.
image that he's produced. But the problem is that a lot of the information, and I think that's part of why he has fallen through the cracks. Like, he's saying, I'm an Olympian. I have all these degrees. I am an
Uh-huh.
immigrant. But then also he's saying that I don't know if he said says, okay, so Ghana in a 2022 interview claims Brooklyn and then raised by a single mother in a 2024 news story. But the marriage certificate says that he was from Ghana. So he has claimed to have been from Brooklyn at some point in an interview. I don't know if he said he was born in Brooklyn or he just allowed people to assume that he was from Brooklyn, but that's
Crazy how it wasn't picked up on earlier than this. It's just
well, and
bizarre.
the thing is that as far as I know, I went looking, and the only time he entered the United States legally was back in 1999 on the student visa. So
Mhm.
he's been in the United States, assuming that he hasn't left, because I didn't see any evidence of him leaving. He's
Right.
been in the United States since 1999, all this time. And the estimate, I think, is that when he came, he was about 30 years old. And previous to that, he had served in the military in Ghana and the police too. So he has like a very interesting and colorful
This guy's done a
resume.
lot of stuff,
Yeah,
apparently.
and I think
Jeez.
that is kinda like what made people think, "Oh, we don't have to look
Mhm.
too far into it," you
Yeah.
know? He has, Georgetown he did have a master's from Georgetown, for example. Education credentials on LinkedIn lists many universities, but no degree shown. Claims 2 masters, 2 doctorates, 1 bachelor's, plus Harvard postdoc, but not all of these can be confirmed.
Weird.
Like
It's like it's just enough positive data to confirm what people hope is true. It's kinda like how if someone, gives you 60% of the truth, or 60% of what they say is accurate, you'll dismiss or kind of turn a blind eye to the 40% that's really cuckoo. I don't know, that just seems like they saw a couple things that they could confirm, and it confirmed what they wanted it to confirm for them, especially if they were looking at it from a diversity standpoint.
Well, speaking of whether or not they were looking at it from a diversity standpoint, do you know who hired him? Like, who ultimately, like, set up the plan to look for someone and then approved his hiring?
I believe it was someone who worked for Kamala Harris,
Nope.
was that it?
Close, close,
Wait,
close.
hold on,
But
Hillary
not
Clinton!
quite. Nope,
Was
not
it
that.
Hillary?
No, it was not
Ah.
Hillary. It was Jackie Norris, who actually was the chief of staff for Michelle Obama at one point.